How I Built This: The Unexpected Path to Success from the World's Most Inspiring Entrepreneurs by Guy Raz with Niels Parker. For builders and those dreaming of a building. Introduction. On an otherwise normal summer Monday in 2018, my wife, Hannah, returned home from her daily run with tears streaming down her cheeks. As she came into the kitchen of our Berkeley, California home, where I was making breakfast for our boys, she pulled the earbuds from her ears and said through deep breaths, "Why didn't you prepare me for this episode?" That morning, the team at How I Built This, the business product podcast I created and have hosted since September 2016, released our most recent episode about Stacy Brown and her company Chicken Salad Chick. I had forgotten this was the episode airing that day because the lag time between an interview and its release is usually many months. What I had not forgotten was how much of an emotional roller coaster my interview with Stacy Brown was, and it was clear from Hannah's reaction that it had resulted in a very powerful episode. Here is the basic outline of the story. Stacy starts making chicken salad out of her home in Auburn, Alabama, as a way to make ends meet after her husband walked out on her and their 3 children, all under the age of 6. Her goal is to earn $500 a month to pay the bills. She finds small-time success right away selling her chicken salad door-to-door for several months, until someone calls the health department on her. Apparently making food out of an unlicensed kitchen and selling it in off-the-shelf storage containers, basically after the back of your car, is technically speaking not legal. In response, the health department shuts her down. As this is happening, she enlists the help of a business-savvy family friend named Kevin Brown, who convinces her not to give up, but to double down and open a restaurant instead, in an 800 square foot shack. The rent is $800 a month, so with his help, she does just that, and is successful too. On their first day in business, they sell out of their chicken salad by 2 p.m. The intensity of the business and their partnership brings Stacy and Kevin closer together. Eventually, they fall in love and get married. Now as partners in life and in business, they steadily grow Chicken Salad Chick and use the cash flow to open 2 additional locations in Auburn, since no bank will even give them the time of day, let alone a small business loan. After 4 or 5 years of bootstrapping their way to sustainability, they realize it's time to find someone who can help them pivot to a franchise model where they will have a shot at turning a real profit and taking some cash out of the businesses. Unfortunately, they end up partnering with a less than honorable couple to whom they foolishly, in retrospect, sell 51% of their company, and who threatened to fire Stacy and Kevin from their own business just a few months later when the 2 couples' visions for the future of Chicken Salad Chick diverge. Unwilling to let go of all they have built, Stacy and Kevin negotiate a buyout, except the partners want a 3 times return on their initial investment, which amounts to $1.3 million. and they want it in 30 days. Oh, they are going to take over the company, and Stacy and Calvin will get nothing. Needless to say, Stacy and Calvin don't have 1.3 million, so they travel all over Alabama pitching to anyone who will listen to them, trying desperately to raise the money. They get nowhere until the very last day, day 30 of 30, when a man named Erlon Michaelwater, who made his money building Lewis home improvement stores, calls them up after attending their pitch meeting at the Auburn Chamber of Commerce and tells them that he believes in them, that he loves their chicken salad, and that he will write them a check for every penny they need. Erlon's investment doesn't just give Stacy and Calvin their company back, it propels them into a franchising model that catches fire immediately. They start opening stores all over the South. Everything is going amazingly well. And then, in the middle of their expansion, Calvin is diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer that has metastasized to his liver. He immediately begins aggressive chemotherapy treatment regimen and astoundingly never misses a single day of work. It's the beginning of another fight. This one, tragically, they will not win. But that does not stop them. Not only do they continue growing Chicken Salad Chick, but they also started the Chicken Salad Chick Foundation to support colon cancer research. As part of their fundraising efforts, Calvin has the idea to put on a huge benefit concert at Auburn University's Jordan Hare Stadium and to have Kenny Chesney, the biggest star in country music at the time, headline it. It's a crazy idea, but then so was a restaurant dedicated exclusively to chicken salad. He helped make that happen, so why not this? Why not, indeed? They get Kenny Chesney, they sell 50,000 tickets, and on the night in April, they fill Jordan Hare Stadium. Except Calvin will not be among the crowd, not in his physical form, at least. He passes away 6 months before, on November 21st, 2015, surrounded by family. For Stacy, it's an unfathomably painful loss. That comes after nearly a full decade of very high highs and incredibly low lows in both her personal life and her professional life. And yet Stacy, like her husband, continues fighting. She perseveres, not just for herself and her children, but for the memory of what Calvin meant to her and to their business. Later that year, all of their effort is rewarded. Chicken Salad Chick is listed in the Inc. 5000 as one of the fastest growing restaurant brands in America. Today, it is a $100 million business. This tumultuous, inspiring story is in many ways a quintessential entrepreneurial story. It's also a classic hero's journey. If you have ever read any Greek methodology or the Bible or watched Star Wars, you have experience with the hero's journey, the concept, identified by the author and philosopher Joseph Campbell, that most great epic stories follow a similar narrative arc. A hero has a crazy idea. People doubted her. She leaves the village to pursue her vision, faces untold obstacles, falls into an abyss, barely escapes death, but manages to come out of the other side with whatever she was looking for and continues on her journey to an eventual triumphant return. This is obviously a gross oversimplification of the structure of the hero's journey, but those are the basic ingredients of a great classic story. They are also the key elements of many great business stories, Stacy Brown's included. It was a discovery I made entirely by accident while but those are the basic ingredients of great classic story. They are also the key elements of many great business stories, Stacy Brown's included. It was a discovery I made entirely by accident while taking a business school class during the year I spent at Harvard as a Newman Journalism Fellow in 2008. It was in that class that I was first exposed to the case study method and to the idea that you could learn about business through stories. Time and again, I found classic heroic journeys embedded in these case studies. There were calls to adventure, trials and errors, all its lost moments. The ultimate boom, all told through the prism of a business. What was even more surprising to me, at least, was that I was at all interested. In high school and college, I used to think that business was a dirty word. To me, it was the realm of hucksters and pitchmen selling cheap consumer products on late-night infomercials, even though my generation produced people like Elon Musk and Larry Page. Most of my cohort subscribed to anti-corporate, anti-commercial ethos. Perhaps best illustrated in the famous 1992 cover of Rolling Stone featuring Kurt Cobain wearing a shirt that read "Corporate magazines still suck." Why would I care about the story of some business? It's not like a business was ever going to be my thing, especially because I watched the ups and downs of my parents' pearl importing business and how much time and energy it sucked out of them. I have vivid memories of my parents grinding away at the kitchen table late into the evening, combining through the customer lists, making cold calls that more often than not ended with the proverbial door being slammed in their faces, all in the service of providing a stable life for me, my younger brother, and my two older sisters. I didn't want the life for myself. Watching my parents endure what entrepreneurship demanded of them, I could not think of any career less suited to my temperament and my interests than talking about business all day, let alone starting one. That's why I went into journalism, then into radio, and eventually into hosting at NPR. And yet, here I am. I have somehow managed to create or co-create 5 podcasts that together generate millions of dollars in revenue and are heard by 19 million people a month. It's a lot of work, more than I ever imagined, and to make sure it all gets done, I started a production company, an actual company. Who would have guessed it? In truth, I'm still not sure how it all came or stays together, but we are a small, nimble, tight-knit outfit, and I freely admit that I loved it. What I love most is the journey of coming up with a big idea and turning it into something tangible, though it would take me until my late 30s to start to feel even a tinge of confidence about some of my ideas or my ability to execute them. For most of my career before then, I struggled with the kinds of worries I thought charismatic entrepreneurs never confronted: anxiety, fear, imposter syndrome, even depression. But over the course of my time doing deep dive interviews with hundreds of business founders and CEOs for my shows, I have come to understand that for the most part, they are just like you and me, which is to say, they are human. They all have sleepless nights and midnight terrors. Most of them, at some point, feel like imposters. They are not natural superheroes. They are all Clark Kents. The only difference between them and you at this moment is that when opportunity presented itself, they went into the phone booth and put on the cape. They took the leap. That's basically it. How I built this book was not my first leap, but it was my biggest, and the one that took the longest to make. It was a slow burn that began with the epiphany inside the Harvard Business School classroom. As a former war reporter, I knew that the most compelling human stories are journeys, and I had a hunch, now that I could see the hero's journey inside most business stories, that there was a tribe out there that would relate to these journeys in a business context. That was how the idea for how I built this evolved. And like the birth of the show, most of the ideas you will read about in this book didn't begin with a big explosion either, but rather with a little spark, a spark that got nurtured, sometimes very slowly, until one day the person who would eventually bring the idea to life woke up to realize the thing that used to get them out of bed in the morning was no longer the thing that fired them up. It was something else now. An idea, as it was for Lara American, Gary Erickson, and Peter Rahul, who all wanted to make a better energy bar. A desire to strike out on their own to see if they could do it, as it was for Angie and Don Bastian when they moved back to Minnesota from Florida and decided to buy a 10,000 kettle corn starter kit that would eventually become Angie's Boom Chicken Kebab. An opportunity that leverages one's skill set and experience. As it was for Randy Hatchick of TRX, when the homemade workout system he had cobbled together to stay in shape while deployed overseas as a Navy SEAL captured the attention of his fellow SEALs, and then his friends, and then other fitness fanatics, including one very famous Super Bowl winning quarterback, or sometimes a lucky and perfectly timed pivot, as it was for Stuart Butterfield when the internal messaging system his team developed to help build a massively multiplayer online game actually turned out to be more promising than the game itself. The game was scrapped. The messaging system became slack. In short, this book is for people who aren't natural-born entrepreneurs or even entrepreneurs at all, but instead are dreaming whose lack of experience is inversely proportional to the force of their ambition and the momentum of their desire to bring something new into the world and to make the world a better place. People who are idealistic but may not have found an idea worth going out on a limb for just yet. People who appreciate success if it comes, and who can find ways to learn from failure when it happens. People who learn the hard way through experience, through the wisdom in those lessons may not always be immediately self-evident to them. People who still have no idea how they ended up where they are with a product or a service, with employees and customers, but who want to make a real go of it because they don't want to let anyone down, least of all themselves. This book is organized to help those people like you and me, like Stacy Brown, succeed. It is the product of in-depth interviews with hundreds of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs from across the business landscape, from the food industry to consumer packaged goods to the tech world and more. It is a synthesis of the lessons I have learned from those founders, and it is structured to follow the path who took as we traced their entrepreneurial hero's journey from the call to found their business, part 1, through the tests and the trials of their growth phases, and finally to their destination as the mature global brands we know today. My goal is to pull back the curtain on entrepreneurship, to shed light on the black box of entrepreneurial success, and to provide architecture for how to think creatively about building something, whether that's an idea, a movement, or, of course, a business. Each chapter explores a discrete moment that nearly every founder faces in the life of their business, from coming up with an idea to getting their story straight, from funding to finding a co-founder, from pivoting their product to building their culture, from surviving catastrophe to figuring out how to grow and scale a business that lasts and leaves them feeling good about who they are and what they have done for the world. That said, not everything in this book will apply to your specific situation. Maybe you are trying to build something small. Maybe you don't want to scale. Maybe you are an employee trying to build something inside your company, and that's totally fine. This book is not an all-or-nothing proposition. I just hope you are able to find something in these pages that leaves you with a sense of both possibility and relief, since almost every story in the book describes a real problem that needed to be solved and an entrepreneur who found a way to solve it. My hope in structuring this book in this way is to show anyone who has the courage to pursue an idea but is struggling with the fear of a failure that every mistake that could be made in business has been made. That solution to your problems have already been found, many of them by the founders you will meet in the pages to come, and that to learn from other people's mistakes instead of going through them yourself is perhaps the only shortcut that exists in all of entrepreneurship. Now that you know how I built this book, let's dive into how these brilliant innovators, entrepreneurs, and idealists build some of the world's greatest businesses, so that one day soon you can build your own. Let's start writing your hero's journey. Guy Raz, Spring 2020.